We've had an amazing year here at Polar Frontier at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. We not only have had one polar bear cub born this year, but we actually have 3. Our first cub was born on November 8th to mom Ranana, and our second 2 cubs were born on November 14th to mom Aurora. We're very lucky here at Columbus Zoo. We have a wonderful space for polar bear moms. Each mom has their own denning space that's quiet, secluded, and dark. In order to allow our staff here to monitor what's going on in the dens, each area is wired with remote cameras that allow us to view what's going on 24 hours a day. So some of the really important things that we were able to monitor via the cameras were how often the cubs were nursing and how well they were growing. We also looked for important milestones, like being able to stand up, roll over, and then some of the really great things like when their eyes opened, when they started teething, or even when they started playing with each other. In the wild, polar bear moms and cubs stay in their dens for about 3 months. Here with our bears, we saw them starting to get curious about the world around them at about 65 days. Our moms were very cautious as their cubs began to explore outside the den. They would go into adjacent areas first to double check and make sure everything was safe before they would actually call the cubs out to the area that they were exploring. So you may remember that last year we had a polar bear cub, Nora, that we had to hand raise, which was an amazing opportunity for our staff here at the zoo. We learned so much from caring for Nora and watching her grow and develop throughout the year. One of the really neat things we saw this year was the opportunity to compare what we saw with Nora and what we saw with these bears here. Last year with Nora, it was our first polar bear cub. It was new to our staff. We were relying on experts around the country to give us advice and help us raise that bear. This year, the real experts took over. Having Aurora and Ranana both raise their cubs was an amazing experience for our staff to be able to watch. One of the really neat things we learned was that both with Nora and the 3 cubs this year, they developed around the same timeline. And the things that we did with Nora to try to teach her to be a bear, such as introducing her to solid foods and when and how we did that, when we introduced her to water, when we tried to encourage her to try new things. We're seeing our polar bear moms do this exact same thing. We're seeing them drop little pieces of meat and fish to their cubs. We're actually seeing them encouraging them to get into the water with them. It's been a really amazing thing to watch. Throughout this whole process, our staff closely monitored the cubs. We wanted to make sure that they were strong swimmers, strong climbers, and had a real sense of confidence in what they were doing. We also paid close attention to the mom's behavior. We wanted to make sure that the moms were comfortable with their cubs becoming more and more independent. The first bears that we put out into the polar bear habitat were Ranana and her little cub. It was really amazing to see Ranana take her cub all around the exhibit. She made sure to show her all of the spaces of the yard. She showed her the mulch piles, the sand piles, the rocks and logs, all the cool places that she now can explore. Once the grand tour was over, the real fun began, and they took their first dip in our big pool. The following day, we introduced Aurora and her twins into the habitat. The experience was much the same, but there were some notable differences. Ranana having a single cub, she spends much of her day playing and interacting with her cub. Aurora, on the other hand, does get a little bit of a break. The cubs can often be seen playing together or chasing each other around the habitat. For all of us here at the Columbus Zoo, it's been an amazing experience to watch these polar bear moms raise their cubs, but it's also allowed us to contribute to polar bear conservation in new ways. For many years, the zoo has supported Polar Bears International and the maternal den studies, looking at polar bear denning in wild habitats. This year, we were afforded a new opportunity. We were able to provide data to researchers studying maternal dens in zoo settings. By taking what we've learned here about what it takes for a polar bear mom to be successful in a den, we can provide that information to researchers and conservationists working with polar bears in the wild. Polar bears in the wild are in big trouble. From global climate change and the loss of sea ice to human encroachment, their natural habitats are gradually shrinking. It's our mission here at the Columbus Zoo to lead and inspire by connecting people and wildlife. It's our hope that guests come meet our bears and are inspired to make a change in their lives that will help save bears in the wild.